Hello, Coffee Cats! Today we are gonna go over a few tips and tricks for the Niche Zero grinder. The first one helps get all of the grounds out of your coffee grinder. I like to call this one the flick and knock, because as we're grinding, we're gonna flick the chute, and then after all of the beans have gone through, we're gonna knock the top. Flick, turn it off, and you knock. This gets rid of a lot of retention that may happen, which is also very minimal on the Niche Zero, I've noticed. So I weighed out 9 grams of beans, and we're gonna grind those 9 grams. As the last beans start going through, give it a flick, turn it off, and give it a knock a few times. And then we're gonna go back to the scale and see how we did. And we've got that 9 grams coming out like magic. My second tip is if you're switching between filter coffee and espresso with the Niche Zero, I would recommend cleaning it a little more often, because when you grind for espresso, you're gonna get a lot more of the fine grinds stuck in your grinder, and that will eventually make its way into your filter grounds. So you may experience some clogging that would otherwise be fixed if you just cleaned your grinder more often. And after you clean your grinder and you're tightening the bolt, the manual says not to tighten it too tight, but I believe that was before the NFC disc came about, and now if you have an NFC disc installed in your niche, I would recommend tightening it quite tight, like as much as you really can without like damaging anything, of course. When I first cleaned my grinder, put it back together, tightened it up, I tightened it as it was recommended in the manual, and then as I was grinding my beans, the bolt just started unscrewing and coming up out of the burrs, and I was kind of freaking out, so I just stopped the grind and tightened it back in. I had to throw away all those grounds and then regrind. But yeah, I've noticed that tightening it as tight as I can has fixed that problem. I haven't had that issue again. So let me know in the comments if you've had the same issue or what you've done. Alright, so this third tip is only if you have your grinder plugged into the same outlet as your kettle. If you run your kettle at the same time as your grinder, they're going to be competing for the amount of electricity that each of them can take. So I've noticed personally with how the electricity is set up at my place, if I have my kettle on and then I start my grinder sounds a little different. It sounds like the motor's kind of skipping at some points. It's almost like it's lagging. I'm guessing because of how much energy is being drawn out from the kettle. So in order to avoid that from happening and to get the best, most consistent grind possible, I just grind my coffee before I start my kettle. That way I have it out of the way. I haven't had an issue with it making a weird sound without the kettle plugged in. But you may have a different situation depending on where you are, what kind of electricity you have going on in your house, and I don't know, mine may be fucked up. This last tip is if you are exclusively using your niche 0 for grinding for filter, or if you use espresso and filter but you don't mind mixing up your numbers on your grinder to make it work for both, so you have numbers for espresso and numbers for filter. If you found yourself way past 50 in no man's land and you're trying to figure out where that is each time you're switching from one brewing method to another, one coffee to another, this is a little trick that may help that process. So when you go to calibrate your grinder, you're of course going to twist it all the way to that calibrate point till you can't twist the metal anymore. And then this calibrate marker is purely a reference. I would definitely not recommend making your reference point counterclockwise to the calibration mark that they have on here. I would only recommend making your calibration mark clockwise from the calibration mark that they have on here, because if you do it counterclockwise, you could potentially be grinding too fine for the grinder and it could damage the grinder. But if you are making your calibration mark clockwise from the calibration that they have on here, you are purely just making your base level grind coarser. The grind will be shifted over counterclockwise. So if I want my grind coarser and to have numbers, like let's say I'm over at the red dot or around the calibration mark for Kalita, I'm gonna want to just move my calibration marker, which is just this little clicky thing, to an arbitrary number of my choice. So I could go to 45, let's say, and that's just gonna be my calibration marker. And then when I go back, 45 is gonna be way coarser with this calibration than before when I had the calibration marker there. And then you'll be able to wiggle around in this range more. It'll be almost like you've moved this little area down to here, if that makes any sense. Overall, the Niche 0 is a great grinder and it's super versatile. I've had some great experience with it. It's taken my brewing to another level. I definitely get cafe quality coffee at home, and I highly recommend it to anybody that's looking to upgrade their brew bar or their kitchen. Just make their coffee at home way better. Thank you so much for your time. I would like to hear from you in the comments section. How do these tips help you? And is there anything that you could recommend to me? Because I always am open to hearing new ideas and hearing people's perspective on things. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day and stay caffeinated, y'all.